Welcome to the True AI Podcast. I'm Alan Hernandez, joined today by Sarah Parker. It is March 6, 2026, and the pace of AI development continues to challenge our legal, social, and economic frameworks. Today, we are looking at several major stories that highlight the friction between rapid technological advancement and the human structures they inhabit.
Thanks, Alan. It's a significant day for the industry, but perhaps for reasons some might find unsettling. From a landmark UK report on the clear and present danger to creative industries, to thousands of job cuts at Oracle to fund data centers, we're seeing the cost of AI progress in very stark terms today. We will also be discussing a deeply sobering report from the UN on the human cost of data labeling and content moderation.
We have a lot to get through. Let's start with the top story of the morning. The UK Communications and Digital Committee has released its final report titled AI, Copyright, and the Creative Industries. Sarah, the language in this report is some of the strongest we've seen from a government body yet.
It really is, Alan. The committee didn't hold back. They used the phrase clear and present danger to describe the threat generative AI poses to the UK's creative sector, an industry that contributes roughly £146 billion a year to their economy. The core of the issue is the unauthorized use of copyrighted works to train large-scale models. The report calls for the government to move toward a licensing-first model and specifically demands that any plans to allow tech firms to crawl data without permission be scrapped.
From a technical perspective, the speculative AI gains the report mentions are what drive the efficiency of the tools millions are now using. To deep dive into this, we have to look at the text and data mining, or TDM, exception. For a long time, the argument from developers has been that if you have to license every single piece of data, every tweet, every blog post, every digital painting, the cost of building these models becomes astronomical. It could stifle innovation before it even reaches its full potential.
But Alan, at what point does innovation just become a euphemism for theft? The report highlights that creators often have no idea if their work has been used because of a total lack of transparency from developers. If a novelist spends 3 years writing a book and an AI model can ingest that in seconds to produce in the style of content that competes with that same author, that isn't innovation. That's market cannibalization. The committee is essentially saying we shouldn't sacrifice a thriving existing industry for a theoretical AI tomorrow that might never pay back that debt.
I understand the concern, but we have to look at the global landscape. If the UK implements a strict, mandatory licensing framework that is significantly more expensive than the US or China, they risk a brain drain of AI talent. Developers will simply move their operations to jurisdictions with more flexible fair use laws. The goal should be a middle ground, perhaps a collective licensing body similar to how the music industry handles royalties, rather than a total halt on data mining.
The report actually addresses that. They're calling for sovereign AI models that are trained transparently and ethically within the UK. They're arguing that the UK should lead the world in responsible AI, not just cheap AI. They also proposed a personality right to protect digital likenesses. This would prevent the unauthorized creation of deepfake voices or personas, which is a massive concern for performers and actors right now.
The personality right is a necessary step, I agree. Protecting an individual's identity is different from using data to learn the structure of language or art. However, if we make transparency a statutory obligation, where every single training set must be disclosed in granular detail, we're asking companies to give up their secret sauce. That's the intellectual property of the developers.
And there's the friction, Alan. We're prioritizing the secret sauce of multi-billion-dollar tech firms over the actual livelihoods of human artists. The committee is making it clear. The government needs to decide if it wants to be a world leader in AI or a protector of its own cultural heritage. It seems impossible at the current time to have both without a massive overhaul of how creators are compensated.
Moving from the creative sector to the infrastructure that powers it, Oracle is in the news today for a reason that's becoming all too common in 2026. They are planning to slash thousands of jobs across multiple divisions. The reason? They need to divert billions of dollars into data center expansion to keep up with AI demand.
This is what experts are calling the AI cash crunch. Oracle is essentially hollowing out its existing workforce, positions that are being labeled obsolete due to automation, to fund the physical hardware required for the next generation of enterprise AI. It's a brutal shift in strategy.
It's a pivot to agentic AI infrastructure. To understand this deep dive, we have to look at how Oracle's business model is changing. They're no longer just a software company. They're becoming a utility provider for AI. They're raising up to $50 billion in capital to build superfactories of compute power. From an investor standpoint, this is a survival move. If you don't own the infrastructure in 2026, you don't own the market.
But the human cost here is staggering. We're talking about thousands of families affected as soon as this month. And it's not just obsolete roles. It's a systematic shift of capital from human talent to silicon. Alan, doesn't this highlight the fragility of the AI will create more jobs argument? Here is a prime example of AI destroying thousands of jobs specifically so the company can afford to build more AI.
It's a transition period, Sarah. The jobs being cut are often in legacy divisions, manual data management, traditional IT support, tasks that the new systems handle more efficiently. Oracle is betting that by building this infrastructure, they will enable thousands of other companies to scale, which eventually leads to growth in other sectors. You cannot build the future on a foundation that is no longer efficient.
Efficiency shouldn't be the only metric of a healthy society. If a company has to terminate thousands of people just to stay in the race, it suggests that the AI gold rush is creating an unsustainable burn rate. Oracle's cash flow is projected to remain negative for the near future. They're gambling the livelihoods of their current employees on a future payout that isn't guaranteed. It's a growth at all costs mentality that leaves a lot of people behind.
This leads us to a story that touches on the ethical foundations of the entire industry. A new report from the UN has highlighted the conditions of what they call the invisible workforce. These are the hundreds of thousands of workers, primarily in the global south, who moderate content and label data for the AI models we use every day.
This report is harrowing. It details workers in India and parts of Africa who are required to review hundreds of videos a day, many of which contain extreme violence, sexual abuse, and trauma, all to teach AI models what is harmful. These workers are often paid pennies, forced to sign strict non-disclosure agreements that prevent them from even seeking therapy, and have no job security.
I think we both agree here, Sarah. This is an area where the industry has failed to regulate itself. The magic of AI isn't magic. It's built on the backs of human beings who have to manually categorize reality so the machine can learn. When we see reports of workers suffering from PTSD because they've been classifying horrific content for 10 hours a day without mental health support, that is an immoral use of human labor.
Absolutely. And what's worse is the lack of transparency. These major tech firms often use third-party contractors to distance themselves from these conditions. A worker might be hired for a data entry job and only realize later that they are being forced to watch the worst of humanity to train a safety filter. The UN is calling for a global alliance to protect these workers and create safe work protocols.
It's a necessary step. If we want trustworthy AI, that trust has to start at the data layer. You cannot have an ethical model if the training process involved the exploitation of vulnerable populations. We need mandatory mental health standards and fair wages globally, or the entire AI for good narrative falls apart.